So we started pictorial sketching over the last two classes. We started with 2D geometrics, then we did 3D geometrics after that. Excuse me. So this was the assignment that we did last class, where I had you draw an oblique three-dimensional drawing, and then I had you draw an isometric three-dimensional drawing. But let's go through here. So essentially, we're going to have two sets of objectives for today. It's fine. I just took two slideshows and turned them into one class. So what we did last time, we did visual representation. We talked about clarity over style. Basically, we wanted to make sure that these were visually identifiable as cubes, right? We did a pictorial drawing, we did an oblique drawing, we did an isometric. We did depth cues, which is talking about how far away from the viewer the drawing is. We talked about proportion, making sure everything looks like it fits into itself very well. And we talked about visualization, which is the ability to see a three-dimensional object in your head without needing to draw it down, like a skill that some people just don't have naturally and other people do. And you have to work on it. We did the oblique drawing method, which is to have a face that is true to size facing you, and then different angles drawing away. And we did it in a way that is, so there's two different types of three-dimensional drawings. There's objective, and then there's perspective. We did objective, which means that if this was drawn accurately with tools and stuff and a ruler, theoretically this line here that is labeled as W and this line here that is labeled as D should be the same length. And they disappear at the same angle, and they don't get smaller as they go away. That's an objective drawing. A perspective drawing gets smaller as it recedes into the distance away from you. This is kind of skipping ahead in what we're doing, but this picture of the railroad tracks down here at the bottom of this page in your workbook is a perspective photo, meaning that you can see the tracks get closer together as they disappear into the distance. And that's a key focus of what we're going to be doing today. The key here is that when you're doing objectives, when you're doing isometrics, you're going for an engineering perspective. You're going for clarity over artistic license. You want it to be accurate, not necessarily pretty. What we're flipping to with perspectives today is we still want that same engineering precision, but we don't want it to look wrong. We want it to look right to your eye, which is perspective. So we did the simple geometric forms and we finished the lab. Last time, we didn't really get into compound forms, which is something that we'll do next class when we do 2-point perspectives. So I'm holding off on that. So, stepping forward to today, we have our 1-point perspective, and that's what we're going to be working on. Find the page in the workbook that says Perspective and Action, a Road. It is in section 6, which doesn't really help you in finding it because this version of the workbook doesn't have page numbers, which is another thing I'm planning on fixing in the next version of this. But ignore the lab numbers. We're not going to be following the lab numbers in here either, at least for this portion. All right, so a 1-point perspective. What is it? It's essentially translating our 3D vision into a 2D surface in a way that looks natural. So we have a technical perspective, basically a sophisticated drawing technique used to represent 3-dimensional objects on 2-dimensional surfaces that accurately convey the height, the width, and the depth of the object relative, and the relative position of it with other things. What we're doing is creating a visual illusion, though. Perspectives create illusions of receding space. It allows technical drawings to communicate volumetric data as it is perceived by the human eye. Who remembers what volumetric data means, or what volumetric means? Okay. Volume. So let's break it down. So volume, which is the amount of space inside of an object, and volumetric is essentially just a way of stretching that word out. So in this term, so I guess saying to break the word down doesn't help, because the other half of that word is metric, and we're not specifically talking about metric dimensioning here. So that was a bad example. Essentially, it's good to stop talking when I'm telling you things that you need to know for this class. And we start off with a horizontal line, or the horizon line. So that's the first thing that you do when you're creating a perspective drawing, because this is the point in which the distance, you can stop seeing things, I guess. So it's so far away that all you get is a straight line instead of a curve. So or not a curve, but instead of more detail. It's also the reference plane for the view. Anything below the horizon line goes to the horizon line up. Anything above the horizon line goes to the horizon line down. What you have in your horizon line, though, is what's called your point of convergence, or the vanishing point. The vanishing point is the spot where all lines recede to in a drawing like this. You have your planar facing, which is the one closest to you that you can see. It usually shows the true size and shape of your drawing. And then you have the receding depth that is distorted by distance. You're going to have orthogonal lines. Essentially, you have your front face, and then you have the line that recedes to the vanishing point. That's our orthogonal lines. I can't talk. So since that's the end of the definitions and the pictures here, let's go ahead and we'll do this together and start drawing our pictorial drawing. So now you'll need that paper that you were given, or that you had passed around, and you'll need your pencil. And we're going to start off by, what did I do? Oh, I put my pencil away. All right, you're definitely going to want a pencil for this, not a pen, because you're going to do a lot of erasing as a part of making this assignment. So I'm going to start through the first few steps with you, and then I'm going to let you go on your own merry way when it comes to the artistic side of things. But luckily, the workbook does walk you through pretty much everything step by step. But before we get to that, we're going to create that title block like we did last time. So essentially, zoom in? Why is this so... There we go. Okay. Alright, so basically about 1/4 of an inch in all of your corners, just eyeballing. We're going to put the dots that are the targets of our straight lines to create our title block. And then we're going to use light overlapping lines. Oops, that got out of control a little bit. To connect them like this. Oops. Okay. I'll go up this direction. And this way. Once you have all 4 sides done, there we go. Choose one of the long edges and make another line just like we did last time. About 1/4 of an inch away from the first line that we just drew. We start off over here with our first initial. Oops, messed that up. In the middle, we're going to write pictorial. Pictorial. Here in about the middle, we're going to put that this is P2. And then we're going to put the date, which is 1/23/26. How much of this I'm going to be able to draw today. All right, once you have that, we're going to look at the space that we have to draw in, which is up here at the top. And we're going to find about the middle of the paper from top to bottom, or the middle of our title block. And we're going to put a light line all the way across. In fact, that's so light, I don't think you can actually see it on my screen. Let's see here. At about the middle of that line, we're going to put a dot. And that dot is going to be our vanishing point. So if you are following along in the workbook, you can see that we've finished number 1 up here at the top, which is to create a horizon line and a vanishing point. From there, we're going to take from our vanishing point down to the bottom line of our paper, so the top of our title block, text block. 2 lines that are roughly the same distance on either side. I'm going to shoot for like here and here, I think. Just as long as they're kind of symmetrical. It doesn't have to be perfect. And then I'm going to connect them to my vanishing point. So I've done that. I'm going to find about straight down from my vanishing point and go just a little bit on either side of a horizontal line from that area. And we're going to do the same thing, except we're going to connect to these 2 dots instead of the ones further out here on the edge. Okay, so from our vanishing point, we're going to come down to these 2 lines, and we're going to make the stripes that go in the middle of this road. Okay, 1 for each side, on both sides. And they should disappear as they, or like get closer together as they recede up to our vanishing point. Okay? So mine's a lot sharper than the one in the guide that we're following here, but it is a good place to start. And remember, this is not, so while this is a part of drafting and technical drawing, this is not a technical drawing in and of itself. It's a skill that you're supposed to have in order to be able to be successful at this. But it's definitely more towards the artistic side of things than the technical side.